Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. I would like us all to take a moment and envision the future. Project yourselves 2 or 3 years in the future. OneD&D has successfully launched. And thanks to the amazing star power of Chris Pine and Hugh Grant, the numbers of people who are now interested in D&D, thanks to Honor Amongst Thieves, surges to an all-time high. So high, in fact, that they can finally achieve what they've always dreamed of at the corporate level, which is to completely wipe out and replace the existing fan base with new, dumber fans. And now you have OneD&D, an online virtual realm where you can funnel and control everything that's going on in your games, and you can milk those sweet, naive players for every last fucking penny they have in their pocket. Oh, the profits to be had. They will be great. And I want you to think, though, those new DMs that are going to be having to step up to take in the shoes of all the dungeon masters who are about to completely quit Dungeons and Dragons entirely over the course of the next year and switch to other systems. Hopefully, some of my systems. Be sure to check out Total Party Skills on DriveThru RPG. Imagine, you're running your first D&D game on their brand new OneD&D virtual tabletop, and your players got their characters all set up the way they wanted, customized. They've put in their money. They've done what Wizards of the Coast wants them to do. They've paid, for skill packages and subclasses and equipment, and they got their virtual miniature avatar all set up just the way they want, and they've paid to win by getting some special equipment that you wouldn't normally get in like the tabletop version. But hey, you want to shell out $4.99 and start off with some magic item, hey, why not? It's all good. They come, they join your game. You have them go into, a little recreation of Kobold Hall from 4th edition D&D, and they're down there in that little dungeon to find the kobolds, get into the traps. And then the virtual dice rollers, don't cooperate with what people want to do, and then, your people who just spent $50 building their customizable virtual characters get their characters killed. Like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen when player characters that players have spent money on, have invested their own cash into, what happens when they get killed in the game? Do you get to keep all those assets you bought? Do you get to just reuse that character in someone else's game? Actually, maybe that's even a question in and of itself. Do players get to just keep using the character they've made through the virtual tabletop and just hop into different people's games playing these characters? As a dungeon master, are you going to be able to homebrew anything? Already, just by fact that it's all going to be funneled through a virtual tabletop, that kind of stands in the way of being able to do proper homebrew kind of rules and stuff like that. Are you even going to be able to restrict player options? I paid $50, for this elf blade singer. What do you mean you're playing a Greek setting that doesn't have elves? You have to let me in. I paid money for this. What, you killed my character? I spent $100 custom. That was a 5th level character. He's got custom, pauldrons and everything. I mean, you can't kill my character. Oh my God! Really stop and think about how players who've had to pay money for their characters are going to act about certain things, and if that's going to lead to good times for anyone, especially the dungeon master. Imagine playing something that is this much framed like a video game, but is all super slow and clunky, where the plot lines aren't, like polished professional plot lines and fetch quests made by video game makers, but it's just some other guy who you're talking with through the keyboard and stuff, and he's coming up with the things that you're facing. And it's all this meandering, slow turn by turn. Everyone gets to take their turn and make a move and do an attack and set up a bonus action and have an opportunity reaction. And it's all just this slowly ticking kind of thing. Or, you could just go play World of Warcraft and just, push the little knob and walk right up to the thing you're trying to fight and just keep hitting the X button until it dies. There's no reason why people would actually end up sliding more towards those sorts of games when presented with the option of a virtual tabletop role-playing game experience of the sort that they're proposing. My early idea is that they would like use this as like a way to like synchronize with Facebook Meta. Kind of makes more sense, but that's be kind of like a passive. You're not even really playing. You're just like hanging out as your character that you designed and just pretending that you're an elf. Hanging out at the inn of the House of the Last Leaves, wherever the fuck. Yeah, just imagine how the players are going to be when they've actually paid money for their shit and then they get their characters killed. Just really think. Like, you already know how some players act when their characters get killed and they haven't invested anything. The people who don't even buy their own players' handbooks can get all up in a twist if a character they've been playing long enough gets wiped out. Just imagine what it's going to be like for the people who've paid the money in. Now, there's some other news that's going on that I find of interest. Apparently, there's been some new leak about what the new version of the OGL is shaping up to be like. And apparently, there is language in it that attempts to basically declare the previous OGLs as no longer valid agreements. Now, whether or not that's going to hold up in court, it's not for me to surmise. However, like Hasbro, things are very like lopsided with Wizards of the Coast since they're owned by a company as large as Hasbro. They can bring a level of legal trouble to bear that no one else can really bring on their side. So how many people are just going to capitulate to the demands without even pushing things to actually see where the line really is in the courts as to how much of D&D can even be copyrighted? Most of the creatures in Dungeons & Dragons are public domain. Things from history are public domain. Aside from a few quirky, specific, invented monsters, there's really not a whole lot in the creature catalog of Dungeons & Dragons that can really be copyrighted, except for specific named NPCs, specific named settings, stuff like that. The rule system, though, you can copyright or trademark a specific engine design for a car, but you can't trademark the concept of engines for cars. And all engines for cars are going to have a lot of common factors. Otherwise, they're not able to function as an engine for a car. And so, there are limits to how much that, they can like claim to own game mechanics in and of themselves. And once again, I don't think this is anything that's ever really been really properly tested in the courts. Most of the time, if a bigger company threatens to sue a smaller company with a cease and desist or something, most of the time, they're going to give in and do what they got to do to, not get dragged through the system. But like, is it? Oh man. Are we at a place where we can actually collectively push back on this enough? Or are we just too fractured as a fan base to get our shit together? They're setting it up to basically, like blanket just kind of dismiss everyone who's complaining. PBS has put out an article about how Gary Gygax was a racial essentialist. Yeah, no shit. Everyone back then was. You know what? I'm willing to bet good money that whoever founded Hasbro was probably a racial essentialist. Hell, whoever founded PBS was probably a racial essentialist, because racial essentialism has been a prevalent, dominant theory in human thinking for quite some time. It still kind of is. It's part of why people hand-wring so much about it when it gets brought up, because they feel guilty. Because it's just how people think. God forbid Gary Gygax thought that maybe halflings would have slightly less strength and slightly more dexterity than your average human being. But like, it's just all a setup. Start planting the seeds out there in the media so that, the established corporate media can all back each other up and say, like, we're not in the wrong. These people are on the wrong. But don't worry, everybody. Don't worry, investors. Keep giving Wizards of the Coast that money to keep, supporting us. from quarterly to report to quarterly report, because we got Chris Pine on the way, and he's going to bring in so many kids. Everyone loves Chris Pine. He's the biggest star ever. And with this new audience, we can just declare all the old audience that isn't willing to play along with us, they're just a bunch of bigots and racial essentialists, and we don't have to listen to them. Well, they don't have to listen to them. And those people don't have to give Wizards of the Coast any more money. I'm just thinking back through recent history, yeah, I do recall how Star Wars and Star Trek both managed to completely flush out and entirely replace their fan base and have it be a financially sound thing that happened. Well, no, wait, that's not how those events happened. The old fans are still the fans, and the new fans kind of slowly have to come around to agreeing with the older disgruntled fans. If they're going to be getting rid of the OGL, or if they're even going to try to get rid of the OGL, do you think DriveThru RPG is going to take the side of the community, or is our DriveThru RPG going to take the side of the giant mega corporation who sells a fuck ton of books through DriveThru RPG? Or, if they want to start sending out cease and desist at everyone who's got their products tagged as D20 related, they can certainly try. It might be a bit harder for, hunting everyone down on Amazon and stuff. And of course, the question marks of it, exactly like what even are we talking about here on the OGL? Like, I'm not sure if they really can get away with using a new OGL to say the previous OGL is null and void. And yet, though, if big people, especially like the companies that want to keep producing and making money, doing official off-brand D&D shit like your Kobold Press and your Piazzo people, they're likely to have to capitulate and agree to this OGL. And by agreeing to this OGL, they are also agreeing that the old OGL is invalid. And if enough people do that, you've basically just, whether or not it's legal, you've had enough people agree to this thing that it becomes reality anyway. So that's why just want to point out once again, here we go, that there are alternatives out there, cheap alternatives, original alternatives, give you the kind of gaming concepts you want for a good price, and that have that real old school feeling of you're, in fresh territory using a rule system that is, real bare bones and hasn't had 40 fucking years of playtesting. This will give you a more OSR experience than anything that's trying to replicate first edition AD&D or BECME or any of this stuff. And that's why you should go on Amazon or DriveThru RPG and get yourself a copy of the Ancient Egypt Bundle. The Ancient Egypt Bundle. Don't you like the idea of having some time-traveling adventures where your characters from a Brendan Fraser mummy movie sent back into the 11th century BC at the very end of the Bronze Age to face vampires and mummies and the undead and ancient wizards and all other sorts of public domain hijinks in the sands of the kingdom of ancient Egypt? Well, you can if you pick yourself up a copy of this. It's a thick boy, as you can see. It's got all the materials you could possibly need that you'll never have to be creative at all. There's plenty of stuff in here where you can run the game for months, if not years, without ever having to stretch your imagination at all. But just in case you're actually a real dungeon master and actually have some creative thought and originality, there's a shit ton of space in here that you get to use to come up with your own material, because I don't spell out every last little corner of the world. There needs to be blank spaces for players and dungeon masters to grow into. The rules are designed as such where if you find there isn't a specific ruling for something you're looking for, you get to make it up. And the rules are consistent enough that it shouldn't be that hard to figure out something that fits and that everyone can find acceptable, because that is what D&D used to be like, and that's what I'm trying to recreate here. So enjoy your brand new day. Happy New Year, and go wasp yourself.